Thomas Webb sat in his repair dock, surrounded by the smell of hot metal and machine oil. The station was quiet today, which was unusual. Most days, ships came and went, bringing broken equipment and desperate people. Thomas had worked in this dock for 30 years, fixing things that nobody else could fix. His hands were marked with burns and scars, and his back ached from bending over workbenches. But he was good at his job and he loved it. There was something about taking something broken and making it work again that filled him with purpose. The alarm on the dock's entrance made a soft beeping sound. Thomas looked up from the engine he was examining. A small figure stood in the airlock, moving strangely. As the figure stepped into the dock, Thomas realized it was an alien. But not like any alien he had seen before. The creature was tall and thin, with smooth gray skin that seemed to shimmer in the dock's artificial light. Its body was covered in what looked like an exoskeleton suit, a mechanical shell that protected the alien's delicate form from the harsh environment of space. The suit was damaged. Large cracks ran across the chest plate and several panels were hanging loose. Blue liquid, which Thomas guessed was coolant, dripped from broken seals. "Help," the alien said, its voice soft and almost musical. "My suit is failing. Please help me." Thomas moved quickly. He had seen many injured beings come through his dock, but something about this creature's voice made him work faster. He guided the alien to a maintenance chair and began scanning the suit with his diagnostic tools. Numbers and symbols appeared on his screen, and they all told the same story. The suit was failing badly. "You're lucky you made it here," Thomas said, his hands already moving to remove the damaged panels. "Another hour in this condition, and your systems would have shut down completely." The alien made a sound that might have been a gasp or a sob. Thomas realized the creature was frightened. He had spent enough time around different species to understand fear, no matter what form it took. "My name is Kai," the alien said quietly. "My people, we were made in a laboratory. We are not natural beings. We do not have families like humans do. I was created 7 years ago with 30 others in my batch." Thomas paused for a moment and looked at the young alien properly. Something in those large, luminous eyes reminded him of his own son. His boy had left the station 15 years ago, seeking adventure in the deep reaches of space. Thomas had never heard from him again. "You're going to be okay," Thomas said, returning to his work. "I fixed worse than this." For the next 3 hours, Thomas worked methodically. He replaced broken circuit boards, resealed the compromised sections, and recalibrated the environmental controls. Kai watched him work, following every movement with intense interest. The alien asked questions constantly, wanting to understand how each piece worked and why it was important. "Why do you care so much about fixing my suit?" Kai asked at one point. "I am not even the same species as you." Thomas didn't look up from his work. "Because you asked me to help. Because you're afraid. Because you deserve to live. Those are enough reasons." By the time the sun had set outside the station's viewports, Thomas had finished. He activated the suit systems and it hummed to life. The blue liquid stopped leaking. The cracks sealed themselves as the plates returned to their original positions. Kai's breathing became easier, and the alien's body relaxed visibly. "You fixed me," Kai said with wonder in his voice. "You actually fixed me." "That's what I do," Thomas replied. He was tired now, feeling the weight of his years in his bones. "I fix things." Kai stood up slowly, testing the suit's movements. Everything worked perfectly. The alien walked around the dock, marveling at each step. Then Kai turned back to Thomas, and the old mechanic saw something in the alien's expression that made him pause. "Sir," Kai began, his voice uncertain. "I have a question. I do not know if I should ask it, but I must know the answer." "Go ahead," Thomas said, sitting down heavily in his own chair. "Ask me anything. When I was created, I was given knowledge and programming. I was taught to work and to follow orders. But I was not given something that I see in you. Something that other beings have. I heard the workers at the station talking about their families. About their mothers and fathers. About people who love them and care about them. I do not have those things. No one made me the way humans make children. I was assembled by machines." Kai paused and his voice became very small. "Sir, I don't have a father. Could you fix this?" Thomas felt something crack open inside his chest. He looked at this young alien, this creature that had been created in a factory and given no choice in existence or purpose. He thought about his own son, about all the things he had wanted to say but never did. He thought about how many years he had spent alone in this dock, fixing machines because it was easier than thinking about the people he had lost. "No, Kai," Thomas said slowly. "I can't fix that with tools. But I can tell you about it. I can answer your questions. I can help you understand what it means to be cared for by someone. That's not the same as being a father, but maybe it's a start. Kai's large eyes seemed to glow brighter. You would do that? For me? Yes, Thomas said simply. I would. And so began a friendship that neither of them had expected. Thomas watched as Kai's damaged suit hummed softly in the dock, fully repaired and ready for the stars. But something in both of them had also been repaired that day. Something that neither had known was broken until it started to heal. 3 weeks passed, and Kai became a regular visitor to Thomas's repair dock. Every day, after his work assignments were finished, the young alien would arrive with questions and an eagerness to learn. Thomas found himself looking forward to these visits more than he cared to admit. On this particular afternoon, Thomas was working on a navigation system from a cargo ship. The wiring was complex, and most mechanics would have simply replaced the entire unit. But Thomas liked to understand how things worked. He liked to fix them properly, not just patch them up. Kai stood beside the workbench, handing Thomas tools as needed. The alien had learned quickly which tool was needed for each task, simply by watching and observing. Thomas found this remarkable. Kai's mind worked in a methodical, logical way, like a computer processing information. But there was something more to it now. There was curiosity. There was desire to understand not just the what, but the why. Thomas, Kai asked, holding a small circuit board, why do you take time to explain things to me? Other humans at the station do not speak to me much. They seem uncomfortable around me. Thomas sat back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. It was a good question and he wanted to answer it honestly. Because you ask, Thomas said simply. You come here and you want to learn. You treat me like I have something worth sharing. Most people don't do that anymore. They're too busy with their own lives. They don't have time for an old man and his machines. Kai made a soft humming sound that Thomas had learned meant the alien was thinking deeply about something. I was created to work, Kai said after a moment. My programming tells me to be useful, to follow orders, to do what I am told. But when I am with you, something is different. You do not tell me what to do. You show me and you let me choose whether to understand or not. That is different from anything in my programming. Thomas picked up a small wrench and smiled. That's because I'm treating you like a person, not like a tool, not like a creature that was made to serve, like someone who can think and feel and make choices. But I was made to serve, Kai said. His large eyes looked down at the circuit board in his hands. My entire body, my entire mind, everything about me was designed for that purpose. How can I be anything else? Thomas set down his tools and turned his full attention to the young alien. This was important. He could feel it. Listen to me, Kai, Thomas said. I had a son. His name was David. When David was young, I taught him to work hard. I taught him to follow rules and do what was expected of him. I thought that was what a father was supposed to do. But David grew up and he realized that he wanted something different from life. He wanted adventure. He wanted to see the stars. And I told him he was foolish. I told him he was throwing away a good life. Thomas paused, his voice growing quieter. He left anyway. He took a ship and he went to the deep colonies. I never heard from him again. For 15 years I have been angry at him. But now, sitting here with you, I realize something. David was doing exactly what I'm doing with you now. He was choosing his own path. He was refusing to be what someone else had decided he should be. Kai listened to every word, his body absolutely still. So you see, Thomas continued, being made for a purpose does not mean you have to stay that way. You have a mind. You can think. You can choose. That is what makes you a person, Kai. Not what you were made for, but what you choose to do with your existence. Over the following days, Thomas began teaching Kai more than just mechanical skills. He taught the young alien about human history, about the choices people made, about love and loss and meaning. They sat in the repair dock during breaks, and Thomas told Kai stories about his life. He told Kai about the day David was born, about how small and fragile he had looked. He talked about teaching David to ride a bicycle, about the scraped knees and the laughter. He spoke about the arguments that came later, about the disappointment in his own eyes when David said he was leaving. I was wrong, Thomas said one evening as they watched the stars through the dock's large viewport. I thought I knew what was best for him. But really I was just scared. I was scared he would get hurt. I was scared he would forget me. Did he? Kai asked. I don't know, Thomas admitted. He never contacted me again. So either he forgot me or he was angry with me or something happened to him out there in the stars. I will probably never know. Kai was quiet for a long time. Then the alien said something that made Thomas's heart stop. I think I understand now, Kai said. You see me as a kind of second chance. Someone you can care for the way you wanted to care for David. Thomas felt tears in his eyes. He had not cried in many years. He had thought he was too old, too worn out by life. But Kai's simple observation cracked something open inside him. Maybe I do, Thomas whispered. Is that wrong? No, Kai said, and the alien reached out one thin hand and placed it on Thomas's shoulder. The gesture was awkward, not quite right for a human comfort, but it was genuine. It was offered with intention and care. I think that is good. I was created with no one to care about me. No one to want me to exist. But you do. You care whether I live or die. You care what I think and what I learn. That is what a father does, is it not? Yes, Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. That is what a father does. From that moment onward, something had changed between them. It was not the relationship between father and son exactly. It was something new, something the Empire's categorization systems had no name for. It was a bond between two beings who had both been lonely, who had both been incomplete, and who had found in each other what they needed most. Kai still asked questions. Thomas still answered them. But now there was something more in their exchanges. There was affection. There was trust. There was the kind of kinship that cannot be programmed or manufactured. It can only be built, piece by piece, day by day, through small acts of care and understanding. When Kai left the dock each evening, Thomas would watch the young alien go, and he would think about David. He would think about all the years he had wasted being angry instead of grateful for the time they had shared. And he would promise himself that he would not make that mistake again. With Kai, he would be the father he had failed to be for David. Not because he was trying to replace his son, but because someone had to show this young alien what it meant to be truly seen, truly valued, truly loved. The warning came without notice. 3 massive ships appeared on the station's radar screen, dropping out of faster-than-light travel with military precision. Thomas was in his repair dock when the alert sounded. He looked up from the engine he was working on and felt his stomach tighten. Military vessels from the Galactic Empire rarely brought good news. The announcement came over the station's communication system moments later. It was Colonel Hayes, his voice cold and official. All engineered beings were to report to the docking bay immediately for reassignment. There was no explanation. There was no negotiation. Thomas's hands began to shake. He knew what this meant. Engineered beings like Kai were considered property of the Empire. They had no legal rights, no protection under interstellar law. They could be taken at any moment, sent anywhere, assigned to any task. The Empire owned them because they had created them. Thomas locked the repair dock's doors. He moved quickly through the corridors of the station, searching for Kai. He found the young alien in the common area, standing with 2 other engineered beings. They looked confused and frightened. Come with me, Thomas said urgently, grabbing Kai's arm. Now. They moved through the station's corridors as quickly as they could without drawing attention. Thomas could hear boots on the metal floors, hear the commands of Imperial soldiers ordering people to move aside. His heart pounded in his chest as they reached the repair dock. He sealed the doors behind them and activated the security locks. What is happening? Kai asked, his large eyes wide with fear. Why are the Imperial soldiers here? They're taking you, Thomas said, his voice harsh with anger and desperation. They're reassigning all engineered beings. I don't know where or why, but I know it's not going to be good. I have to go, Kai said, moving toward the door. It is my duty. I was created to. No, Thomas interrupted. He had never spoken to Kai with such force before. You were created by them, but that does not give them the right to own you. You are a person, Kai. You have thoughts and feelings and choices. You are not their property. Kai looked confused, as if Kai was processing information that contradicted everything in the alien's programming. But the law says, Kai began. The law is wrong, Thomas said firmly. The law that says you are property is an unjust law. And I will not let you go willingly. Not without a fight. They heard pounding on the dock's doors. Colonel Hayes's voice came through the intercom system. Open this door immediately, the colonel commanded. We are here to collect all engineered workers. This is an official Imperial order. Thomas stood in front of the sealed doors, his old body rigid with determination. He had spent 30 years avoiding trouble, doing his job, keeping his head down. But looking at Kai, seeing the fear in that young alien's expression, Thomas understood that some things were worth fighting for. No, Thomas called back through the intercom. I will not open this door. This being is under my protection. He is not Imperial property. For a moment there was silence. Then Colonel Hayes's voice returned, this time with an edge of amusement. Thomas Webb, you are interfering with Imperial law. Stand down, or you will be charged with obstruction and treason. Thomas's hands trembled, but his voice was steady. I will not. The pounding on the door intensified. Kai moved closer to Thomas, and the old mechanic could hear the alien's breathing becoming shallow and rapid. Fear, Thomas realized. Kai was experiencing real fear. It will be okay, Thomas said, placing a hand on Kai's shoulder. I promise you, I will not let them take you without a fight. Word spread quickly through the station. Thomas's refusal to open the dock's doors became the talk of the corridors. Other mechanics and workers, people who respected Thomas and his skills, began to gather outside the sealed doors. The station's commander, a woman named Rebecca Chin, arrived with guards of her own. She looked at Colonel Hayes with displeasure. Colonel, Thomas Webb has worked on this station for 30 years. He is the most skilled mechanic we have. You cannot simply take from him what he refuses to give. He is harboring Imperial property, Hayes said coldly. The law is clear. The law may be clear, Commander Chin replied, but I am the authority here. And I say that we need to discuss this matter before taking action. If you attempt to forcibly breach that dock, you will damage critical station equipment. That equipment is owned by the Merchants Coalition, not the Empire. Thomas listened to this exchange through the intercom system. He realized that Commander Chin was buying him time. She was protecting him. Hayes was frustrated. He could see that using force would create complications. The Empire did not want to antagonize the Merchants Coalition, which controlled much of the trade in this sector. If he damaged their station, there would be consequences. Very well, Hayes said finally. But this is not over, Webb. You are interfering with Imperial authority. There will be repercussions. Over the next hours, a strange standoff developed. Thomas remained in his dock with Kai, while Imperial soldiers waited outside. Crew members brought food and water. They offered their support. Thomas realized with some surprise that he had more friends than he thought he did. That night, sitting in the repair dock while Kai slept on a cot in the corner, Thomas thought about his choices. He was throwing away his career, his stability, his entire life. At his age, there was no way to recover from this. But when he looked at Kai's sleeping form, Thomas knew he had made the right decision. Kai was not just an alien he had befriended. Kai was the second chance Thomas had never expected to get. Kai was the opportunity to do what he should have done with David, to stand up and say that this person matters, that this being has value, that I will not let anyone take them from me without a fight. The next morning, Commander Chin returned with a proposal. The Empire would accept a compromise. Kai would remain on the station, but under Thomas's personal responsibility. If Kai caused any trouble, both of them would be arrested. Thomas agreed immediately, knowing it was the best outcome they could hope for. As Colonel Hayes and his ships departed, Thomas turned to Kai and said the words that the young alien needed to hear. I chose you, Thomas said simply. I chose you over my career, over my safety, over my comfort. That is what people do when they love someone. That is what fathers do. Kai's large eyes filled with something that looked like tears, though Thomas was not sure if engineered beings could actually cry. Thank you, Kai whispered. Thank you for choosing me. 2 months had passed since Colonel Hayes and his ships left the station. Those 2 months had been difficult. Thomas was confined to the repair dock during his work hours and to his small quarters during off hours. He was not allowed to leave the station. His movements were tracked constantly. But he did not regret his decision. Kai had changed during this time. The young alien was no longer just curious and eager to learn. Kai had become thoughtful, almost melancholic. The alien would spend hours staring out at the stars through the viewport, as if thinking about something very far away. One evening, Thomas found Kai sitting alone in the repair dock, holding a small data pad. On the screen were images and documents. Thomas recognized them immediately. They were records from the Imperial labs where engineered beings like Kai were created. Where did you get this? Thomas asked, sitting down beside the young alien. I found access codes in the station's old database, Kai explained. I have been studying my own creation. Looking at the blueprints of my body, my mind, my programming. I wanted to understand what I am. Thomas looked at the images. They were disturbing. Rows of chambers containing developing alien bodies. Charts showing genetic modifications and control mechanisms built into the minds of engineered beings. Documentation describing the different models of engineered workers, each designed for specific tasks. What do you think? Thomas asked gently. Kai was silent for a long moment. When the alien finally spoke, there was pain in his voice. I think I was made to be a slave, Kai said. Not just to work, but to want to work. To find satisfaction in obedience. To never question my existence or my purpose. Everything about me was designed to make me a perfect servant. Thomas felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced it down. This was not the time for anger. This was the time for Kai to be heard. And now? Thomas asked. Now I am different, Kai said. You taught me that I could think for myself. You showed me that I could choose. But Thomas, there are thousands of other engineered beings out there. They are still in the labs. They are being sent to mining colonies and workstations. They are suffering the same control that I suffered. And no one is helping them. Thomas understood what Kai was saying. He understood the weight of what the young alien was contemplating. If you stay and fight for them, it will be dangerous, Thomas said carefully. The Empire will not simply let you speak out against them. You could be arrested. Worse. I know, Kai said. But if I do nothing, then I am choosing comfort over justice. I am choosing my own safety over the freedom of my kind. How is that different from the programming that made me a slave? Thomas stood up and walked to the viewport. He looked out at the stars, thinking about his own son. Thinking about all the times he had chosen the easy path instead of the right path. Thinking about the years he had wasted being afraid. There is another option, Thomas said, turning back to face Kai. I have a contact, a captain who runs a cargo ship. She travels to the human colony at New Hope. It is a place where people go to escape the Empire. Where they can start new lives without fear. I could get you passage. You could be safe there. Kai looked up at Thomas. But you would not go with me. I cannot, Thomas said. I am already marked by the Empire. If I tried to leave, they would catch me. But you, Kai, you are young. You could have a real life there. You could be free. Kai stood up and moved to the viewport beside Thomas. The young alien's reflection was barely visible in the glass, just a faint shimmer against the darkness of space. If I go to New Hope, I will be safe, Kai said slowly. But thousands of others will remain enslaved. They will remain in the labs, in the work camps, suffering control they do not choose. How can I be free when I know they are not? Because one being cannot save everyone, Thomas said. You cannot carry the weight of your entire species on your shoulders. No, Kai agreed. But I can try. I can speak out. I can gather evidence. I can show the galaxy what is happening to us. And maybe, just maybe, if enough people hear the truth, something will change. Kai turned to face Thomas, and in that moment, Thomas saw something he had never seen before. He saw an adult. Not the young, confused alien who had first arrived at his dock with a broken suit, but a being who had made a real choice. A being who understood the cost and was willing to pay it. I choose to stay, Kai said. I choose to fight. And I ask you to help me. Thomas felt his throat tighten. He wanted to tell Kai no. He wanted to put his young friend on that ship to New Hope and know that at least Kai would be safe. But he understood now that that was not what Kai needed. What Kai needed was for Thomas to believe in him. To stand beside him. To be the father figure who did not shelter his child from the world, but who stood with him as he faced it. Then we will fight together, Thomas said. I will help you gather the evidence. I will help you contact people in the government who might listen. We will do this the right way through channels that cannot be dismissed. It will take time. It will be dangerous. But we will do it. Kai reached out and embraced Thomas. The gesture was still awkward, not quite the way humans embraced each other, but it was genuine. It was filled with gratitude and affection and something deeper than that. It was the embrace of someone who had found not just a teacher or a protector, but a true father. They stood together in the repair dock, looking out at the stars. Thomas thought about the life he had lived, the mistakes he had made, the opportunities he had missed. He thought about David and all the years they had lost to anger and misunderstanding. But he also thought about this moment. This moment when he had a chance to do something that mattered. This moment when he could stand up for what was right, even though it would cost him everything. Thomas pulled Kai closer and said the words that neither of them would ever forget. I am proud of you, Kai. Your father would be proud of you. And I will be here with you whatever comes next. 8 months had passed since Kai made the choice to stay and fight. 8 months of gathering evidence, recording testimonies, and building a case that could not be ignored. Thomas and Kai had worked tirelessly, moving carefully through the shadows of the station, collecting documents that proved the Empire's systematic control over engineered beings. They had help from unexpected places. Commander Chin provided access to Imperial databases. Other station workers, moved by Kai's courage, brought information from their own contacts. Slowly, carefully, a picture emerged of the truth that the Empire had hidden for decades. The evidence showed everything. It showed the genetic modifications that prevented engineered beings from disobeying orders. It showed the laboratories where new workers were created, treated like products rather than beings. It showed the conditions in the mining colonies where engineered workers were sent to die. It showed that the Empire had systematically erased the personhood of an entire species. When they finally had enough evidence, Thomas and Kai sent it to the human parliament on Earth. They sent it to news organizations. They sent it to every human official who had the power to do something about it. And they waited. The response came faster than either of them had expected. Within weeks, the evidence had spread across the entire human communication network. News channels were broadcasting Kai's story. The young alien had given interviews, telling the truth about what it meant to be created as a slave, about the journey from programming to consciousness, about the choice to fight for freedom. Kai's face appeared on screens across the solar system. The image of a young, brave alien standing beside an old human mechanic became the symbol of a growing movement. Other engineered beings, inspired by Kai's courage, began coming forward with their own stories. They spoke about the control, the pain, the slow realization that they were more than the Empire had made them to be. The Empire tried to silence them. They tried to dismiss the evidence as fabricated. They tried to claim that engineered beings were not capable of independent thought and that they were being manipulated by human activists. But the truth was too powerful. Too many people had seen it. Too many people believed it. The human parliament launched an official investigation. Teams of researchers visited the mining colonies. They interviewed hundreds of engineered beings. They examined the laboratory facilities. They reviewed thousands of documents. The investigation took 3 months, and the results were devastating for the Empire. The Parliament's report concluded that the Empire had committed systematic abuse and violation of basic rights against an entire species. It recommended sanctions. It recommended forced reforms. It recommended that all engineered beings be granted provisional legal status as individuals with rights and protections. The Empire fought back, of course. They had economic power and political connections. But they could not fight the truth. Not when the truth had been broadcast to billions of people across the galaxy. Not when the image of a young alien asking for help had touched something in the human heart. Slowly, changes began to happen. The mining colonies were shut down. New laws were passed protecting engineered beings. Colonies and stations began recognizing their autonomy and their right to choose their own paths. It was not perfect. There was still resistance. There was still injustice. But it was a beginning. 9 months after sending the evidence to Parliament, Kai returned to the repair dock on the station. Thomas was working on a small starship engine, just as he had been on the day they first met. The old mechanic looked up and smiled. "Hello, Kai," Thomas said. "I heard your speech before Parliament. Well done." Kai moved closer, and Thomas could see that the young alien had changed again. There was a confidence now, a sense of purpose that came from having done something that mattered. "I would not be here without you," Kai said. "I would not be standing before Parliament. I would not be speaking for my kind. If you had not stopped Colonel Hayes, if you had not believed in me when I did not believe in myself, none of this would have happened." Thomas set down his tools and wiped his hands on a cloth. "You did the hard part, Kai. You made the choice. You had the courage to stand up and speak the truth. I just helped you get started." "No," Kai said. "You did much more than that. You taught me that I was a person. You taught me that I had value. You taught me that I could choose my own path. But most importantly, you loved me when no one else did. You became the father I never had." Thomas felt tears forming in his eyes. He had not cried much in his life, but he seemed to cry more easily now. Perhaps it was because he had learned that showing emotion was not weakness. Perhaps it was because Kai had taught him that love was worth the pain. "I have been thinking about something you told me once," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "You asked if I could fix the fact that you did not have a father. I told you I could not fix it with tools. But I was wrong. I was able to fix it, Kai. Not with a wrench or a soldering iron, but with time and care and belief in who you could become." "Yes," Kai said softly. "You fixed it." They stood together in the repair dock, the old human and the young alien, two beings who had found in each other what they had both been missing. Thomas thought about his son David, about all the years that had been lost to anger and misunderstanding. He could not change the past. He could not bring David back. But he could honor what had been lost by doing right by Kai. "You know what I realized?" Kai said, breaking the silence. "A father is not something you are born with. It is not something genetic or programmed into your body. A father is someone who sees you as a person when the rest of the world sees you as a tool. A father is someone who believes in you when you do not believe in yourself. A father is someone who chooses to love you even when it costs them everything. Thomas pulled Kai into an embrace. It was still slightly awkward, the body mechanics of human and alien not quite matching up. But it was real. It was genuine. It was filled with love. "Then I am honored to be your father," Thomas said. "And I am proud of you, Kai. More proud than I can express in words." 6 months later, Thomas received a message from the deep colonies. It was from a ship captain named Rebecca. She was writing to tell him that she had found someone who matched the description of his son David. The captain had delivered supplies to a distant station and had met a man who was an engineer, just like Thomas. A man who had left his father 30 years ago and never looked back. Thomas read the message 3 times, his heart pounding. He showed it to Kai, and the young alien read it carefully. "Will you contact him?" Kai asked. Thomas was quiet for a long time. He thought about David, about the anger and the hurt. He thought about all the years of silence. "Yes," Thomas said finally. "I think I will. And I will tell him about you. I will tell him that I have learned what it means to be a father. And maybe, just maybe, it is not too late to begin again." Kai reached out and placed a hand on Thomas's shoulder. "I think he will want to hear from you," the young alien said. "I think he will want to know that his father finally understands." Thomas and Kai stood together in the repair dock watching the stars. One was old and human, marked by time and regret. One was young and alien, a being created in a laboratory who had become so much more. But they were no longer alone. They had found each other. They had found family. And in a galaxy that often seemed cold and uncaring, that was everything.